Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll move to 3.4, Division 3 Councillor Report.
Okay, my report's on the server, and I'll just talk about WFCSS is having a women's conference on April 9th, so this weekend, and just a heads up. And then the Good Food Box is going very well, like larger than ever. For here, we're actually supporting Zano, right? They're coming here, and because they only go this far, so the Zano will come here and pick up for their residents too, if there's any orders. Plus, there'll be no extra funding for WFCSS this year. And I'll move my report as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Baker? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.5, Division 4 Councillor Report.
Yeah, my report's on the server. I think everything's been touched on, so I will move my report as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Eichert? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.6, Division 6 Councillor Report.
Yeah, my report's on the server. I'd just like to highlight a couple of some of them. On the 11th, it was competency-based boards. It's part of a 10-year plan. After listening to that presentation, I feel like the board we have is competency-based for sure. The boards are going to be required to develop a plan, a bylaw, if you want, to support competency-based. And what I got out of it is the province is moving to dispose of all their social housing properties. In Strathmore have quite a bit, as well as the surrounding villages and hamlets. But asking questions with said that we don't have to worry about it because they'll come to us when it's our turn and they'll negotiate with us individually and tell us how it's all going to work. So right now we lose money on all those and the provincial government picks up the tab, right? It's going to be hard for the municipalities to pick them up without any help, right? So it's just not, it's a transfer or downloading, and they will come to us with their offer or their deal. So we don't have to worry about that for the foreseeable future. Yeah, I think that's all in these competency-based boards. I was quite worried about that too, so it doesn't... Oh, the reason why they want the competency-based boards, some boards in the province don't actually own property. They're just there for, I guess, their management body, but they don't deal with the property per se. So they want all the boards to have a certain amount of competency before they deal with transferring of this property. So it makes sense to me. And I guess too, we haven't had that presentation yet from the investigator. The council's wants I'll reserve the right to present my motion after the presentation, or do you want me to present it now? This is the motion that I presented last council meeting.
Just through from administration, a point of procedure would be if a motion is wanted to be put forward, it would just require a notice of motion or to be added to the agenda for future. But the best practice would be a notice of motion and then have it for a set date at a future meeting.
That's what I meant to do last meeting. I said at a deferred date. So is that not the same as a,
Procedurally, no. And I guess administration just wouldn't want to interpret that on council's behalf to put a notice of motion, but definitely can put a notion. Yes. Forward. And all you would have to do is just set the date to be discussed. So the date can be set in the motion as well.
so could I set it for today if council voted for it? Being that I missed the agenda?
So the notice of motion would just have to be for a future council meeting, and the current next one scheduled is the 19th.
19th?
Yeah, 19th of April.
Okay. Put a notice of motion that on the 19th I'll present. Do I read out the motion, or I'm thinking so?
Yes, and then that would be recorded into the minutes.
Okay.
The procedure bylaw states,
Okay.
do you want me to read?
Yeah.
Would you like me to read from the procedure bylaw, the notice of
please.
motion?
Yes, please, Tracy.
Okay. All right, under 7.8 of our procedure bylaw, notice of motion. A notice of motion must be used to introduce a new matter for consideration by council which does not appear on the agenda and must be given without discussion of the matter. But any written copies distributed may include explanatory paragraphs. It must give sufficient detail so that the subject of the motion and any proposed action can be determined, and it must state the date of the meeting at which the motion will be made. If the subject matter and proposed action contained in the notice of motion is determined by the chairperson to be a program request, I'll skip over that. A notice of motion introduced in accordance with this section shall be included under council priorities on the agenda at the next regular meeting or other meeting dates as specified by the councillor. It may be received by the CAO prior to the closing of the meeting. In this event, the councillor shall read the notice of motion, which shall be recorded in the minutes. Last point, a councillor who hands a written notice of motion to the CAO officer or CAO to be read at any regular meeting need not necessarily be present during the reading of the notice.
So when you interpret that, sorry, is it the motion read out or the intent of the motion?
I think you're providing enough information to council and providing them notice of the motion you're going to make at the next meeting.
Okay.
So it provides time for yourself to gather information, council to gather information, and then it's you have time to look into it, I suppose. So it's not a surprise,
Okay.
for lack of a better word.
Okay. I got a few notes here, then I'll just read out my notes, and then on the 19th, a notice of motion for the 19th. Okay, my notes are on resolution CM 2022-03-28 was moved by Link, and it was 6.6 on the agenda. FOIP Section 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, re-code of conduct. So that was the motion. It went into camera, and coming out of camera, resolution CM 2012-03-33, moved by Clausen, that council direct administration to hire an independent investigation team in accordance with bylaw 2022-05, section 14.5B, to follow the procedure set out in the bylaw 2205-05 for the official complaint filed against Councillor Kester. And when I look at the bylaw, section 14.2, motion contravenes section 14.11 of the bylaw. So when I look at the bylaws, everything was done right. 14.2, it says a complaint. And then it goes on A to F, what a complaint is. That says a complaint's name and information, the name of the counselor to whom the complaint relates, the nature of the alleged bylaw contravention, the specific provisions of the bylaw to which have been contravened, names of any witnesses to the alleged contravention, any other supporting documentation that will assist in the evaluation of the complaint. That was all done right. That was all done in camera. But then they go to 14.11, and it says the complaint and all information related to the complaint investigation is confidential information. But when I read that, there's no way that my name should have been mentioned in the motion. It was brought out of in camera and made public. With nothing else of those 5 points, 6 points made public. It was just the one. And that's what my motion will pertain to on the 19th. Is that enough information, Tracy? Or Brian? I should ask Brian.
So you will bring a motion back, just stating that
It was,
you don't believe that was followed correctly?
yeah, so my motion will be, speak to the point that my name was made public. Therefore, I would like to have the whole complaint made public. So it's completely fair and transparent to me and to council. Brought out a piece of it, so I believe everything should be public. That'll be my motion.
From administration, I believe that is clear enough.
Yeah, you can take it.
First, we had a motion, I think, where he had accepted his report as information. This is after the fact, correct? So we should probably,
It'll be after this.
so we should do you should do the report for information first and accept it, and then we can deal with this, and I can take over.
This is part of my report.
Where do you want?
Is a notice of motion votable, or is it just being polite?
Council does not vote on a notice of a
Yeah,
motion.
you don't discuss it or anything.
Yeah, so
So
it's
that's
just
part
to
of-
introduce a new matter
Yeah.
for consideration by council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's notice of motion. It's part of my report.
yeah. So the motion would go at the next meeting and council would vote on that.
Right. Would include it in the agenda.
Yes, so that will be recorded in the minutes that there was a notice of motion coming forward at the April 19th meeting. And then just the Divisional 6 council report just needs to be accepted as well as information.
Right. So if there's no questions, I'll move my report.
Glenn, I had a question regarding this update on Stronger Foundations. I wanted to attend that, but I wasn't able to, so I was just curious what came out of that, anything?
On which date?
The 24th, there was a Wheatland Housing Management Board update on Stronger Foundations. Stronger Foundations is the Alberta document about seniors housing, I think.
And they were talking about the competency boards, and maybe that's where I heard the reason why they wanted the competency boards. And it was mostly about social housing aspect too. It wasn't so much about the lodge aspect. And I think that's where maybe I asked the questions of how do we prepare to take over, or how do we even plan if we even want to take over some of these properties, and then do we have to take them over? And he said they would get in touch with every individual board when is your time. So they're figuring, he thought for us at least 3 years before it would be our turn. And he also talked about, right now the government doesn't pay any taxes. They used to. They didn't pay taxes, they paid, what's the term?
Something in lieu of.
In
right?
lieu of,
Yeah.
or lieu of taxes, they
Yeah.
had a payment. And Strathmore would used to get that every year, but they just cut that off a few years ago. And right now, there is no grant in lieu of taxes, and there is no taxes on those properties. Those properties are transferred over to a management body. That tax relief is still there until you sell the property for commercial means or somebody else buys it, then taxation's on. Yeah. So, yeah. Hope that answers your question. I can't think of anything else. I kind of rely on all the things that affects our board. There's always a few things that don't affect us. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.7, Division 7 Councillor Report.
Okay, my report's in the package. I'll just add a little to Glenn's on the updates on Stronger Foundation. I've dialed into that meeting. I'm not sure why it was called that, to be honest with you, because it really was just a further update to the March 11th consultation on board competency meeting. So, I mean, I don't know what their intent was, but that ended up being the gist of the conversation, is what does a competency board look like and how can you do it? And it, I would have to agree with Glenn as far as the Wheatland Housing Management Board. I think there's enough diversity on that board right now that we would meet their criteria for competency. They were very clear that they're not expecting you to have lawyers or real estate professionals or that kind of people on the board. And very much so, particularly for the smaller boards, that if you need that kind of expertise, you can outsource it. You don't have to have that person sitting on the board. The rest of my stuff is pretty straightforward, except I do want to, in light of the fact that Donna and Amber won't be here tomorrow, I want to just do a little bit more on the Ag Service Board meeting that we're going to have tomorrow. So just a little bit of background. You'll all remember that we met on the 12th and we had a resolution we were going to go that we withdrew. And then on the 24th, we had a special meeting to withdraw that thing, and then we decided that we would go ahead. That's not that we don't support the idea, we just needed to do it in a better fashion. So that was done, and then there's some stuff on the ASB conference. There's links there if you want to follow them. But on March 2nd, we had an A-list meeting. You can read that if you want. But on March 22nd, Shannon and I met with Spencer Hilton and Ken Sove and Vicky Bain, and I think Shannon Desmond was on the line. There were several other people on the line. And we just met basically to discuss, where do we need to go with this kind of stuff. And we didn't discuss anything that we haven't already discussed as either a council or the Ag Service Board, but if you look in the report, there's kind of a 3-point thing that we wanted to bring for you for consideration. And that's provide a letter of support to the Wheatland, and it should be 2 A's, not 1 A in my report, Wheatland something Surface Rights Society. There's an A missing, but anyway.
And area, I believe.
An area, that's right, yeah. Spencer corrected me quite well on that. But anyway, that we should just provide a letter of support, which I'm going to read to you today, that we'll adopt tomorrow. But because Donna and Amber aren't going to be there tomorrow, I thought I'd read it for them. And then we would, explore the opportunities to meet and discuss with both CAP and EPAC, the Oil Producers Association, just to see if there's opportunities there. And then, as we had also agreed previously, we would revise and complete the resolution, have it reviewed by legal, and have it ready for presentation. So those are the 3 things we kind of discussed with Spencer and company. And so with a lot of help from administration, we've got a letter that we're just going to send to Brian, assuming the board approves it tomorrow. And it just says, I would like to take this opportunity to reach out to you on behalf of the Wheatland County Ag Service Board to express the board's appreciation for the efforts of the Wheatland and Area Surface Rights Society in supporting local agriculture producers. The ASB operates under the authority of Wheatland County Council with a specific duty assigned from Council to promote, enhance, and protect viable and sustainable agriculture with a view to improving the economic viability of the agricultural producer. As such, the ASB supports the efforts of the WAASRS to provide aid and educational opportunities to agricultural producers to better understand and advocate for their rights and privileges under the Province of Alberta's Surface Rights Act. The ASB acknowledges the importance of the energy industry as forming a significant portion of the local economy, is playing a major role in fostering the sustainability, growth, and development of the local agriculture industry. As such, the ASB encourages and supports the work of individuals and groups in cultivating mutually beneficial relationships and practices between energy companies and agriculture producers within the bounds of legislated systems and procedures. The WAASRS has reached out to the Wheatland County ASB to seek support in advocating for individual local landowners who are in various forms of dispute with individual oil and gas companies in relation to the formation and execution of land surface leases between these distinct landowners and oil and gas companies. The ASB understands that the main points of concern by these landowners and the main areas of advocacy by the WAASRS to be described in general by the following statements. Individual landowners should not experience financial loss due to oil and gas company activities on their land, nor experience a financial loss due to the land surface lease review and negotiation process. Oil and gas operators be required, as has occurred historically, to pay all costs incurred by landowners related to contractual negotiations with oil and gas operators and land and property rights tribunal proceedings. Original contracts signed between landowners and oil and gas companies, which contracts were negotiated in good faith with the intention of ensuring that the landowner does not experience financial loss due to the development, be honored in the manner set out by legislation. Wheatland ASB recognizes and appreciates that most oil and gas operators are good corporate citizens who honor existing surface lease contracts and negotiate with landowners in good faith according to the regulations and precepts set out in the Alberta Surface Rights Act. The WAASRS has informed the ASB of allegations from some local landowners that a few individual companies have chosen not to honor existing lease contracts, or that some oil and gas companies may be approaching land surface lease negotiations without genuine intent to ensure landowners not experience financial loss as a result of oil and gas activities on their land. This does present potential concern to the Wheatland County Agriculture Service Board in relation to the board's aforementioned duties as assigned to it by Wheatland County Council. The Wheatland ASB looks forward to continued discussion and collaboration with the WAASRS to explore the various means and methods Wheatland County may, within the bounds of legislated systems and procedures, be able to provide support to the efforts of the WAASRS in promoting, enhancing, and protecting the economic viability of agriculture producers. Respectfully submitted by me as the chair. So that's what we're going to present tomorrow. Questions? It's pretty straightforward and generic, so it's not accusing anybody of anything. Shouldn't get us in any trouble.
Any questions? Councillor Custer.
Not a question to the letter, but one other thing did come up on the 24th. We had that original competency-based meeting. Then we had the RMA, and if you remember the Bear Pit session, there was a couple of aggressive questions put forward to the minister about the competency-based. And then the next meeting, you're absolutely right, they are more directed at that to answer those fears that were brought up at the Bear Pit sessions at the RMA. I won't name the individual.
Any other questions or comments for Councillor Larson's report? You move to accept.
I will move to accept.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
Sure, thanks.
We'll move to 3.71. Councillor Larson requested to add an agenda item regarding VoIP and personal devices.
So this question just came to me from a different CAO. So I guess, I don't know if we have policy. If we do, and it was in orientation, I missed it. But a bunch of us use our personal cell phones. And my understanding from this person is that my entire phone is VoIPable, not just the county part. So, and or say iPad if you use it or anything. So if we can just get some clarification on that, I might be asking for a phone next.
Council, we have our IT manager, Corey, on the line to answer that question.
Yeah, good afternoon, Reeve and Council and Councillor Larson. That's a great question. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
You bet. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that's a great question. We do want to ensure to be conscious of the privacy of our employees and councillors for sure.
Can you
So my
speak
hope
up,
is
Corey?
to answer those questions through some... Oh, sorry.
Closer to the mic, probably.
Just maybe closer
Can you hear me
to-
better now?
A little bit better, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so my hope is to answer this question through summarizing our policy. So we do have some policies in regards to this. So our policy 4.2.11.1, which is our policy regarding BYOD, which stands for Bring Your Own Device policy. So regarding the personal devices of an employee, the items that are subject to VoIP are only where the information on the medium is used to make business decisions, transactions, or discussions relating to a request, like to the request or the requester, which should then, at that point, it's considered a business record. So this could be SMS messaging or private messaging. So in light of this, we don't recommend to use personal devices or even corporate SMS or instant messaging to make significant business decisions or transactions. So, and also just to kind of clarify, like when just the term personal devices here, that definition of that is only for devices that are approved as a BYOD device or bring your own device, where the employee then has read the policy and signed the BYOD document. But more procedurally, though, a FOIP request on something like that, though, would only be used if there was ample evidence that the medium used to make those decisions or transactions, discussions, and things like that were done on personal messaging. So if that has occurred, it's best to be just preemptive and have records saved off and say added to a file. So in the event, though, that happened and we didn't have those records, we would not have access or ability to access the personal information on the phone at all. We would request the employee to voluntarily provide screenshots of that conversation thread. So there might be, though, some exceptions to this for elected officials, such as in-camera items, but I'll have to have our FOIP coordinator read into the FOIP Act to confirm that, or if there is any other possible exceptions. And if there are, I can definitely be sure to include that in a future report or update if required. So if there's any other questions, I'll try to answer them as best as possible.
So we do recommend that councillors in particular keep their personal and county business separate. I do know some councillors who have a work phone and a county phone and they keep them separate. So do not mix the two together. But again, like Corey said, if we receive a FOIP request, the coordinator determines, okay, who might know about this. You would receive an email saying, please send us all your information regarding X, Y, and Z. And then you would send that to us, screenshots or emails or whatever you have. And that's generally the process. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I understood from this guy, though, that not necessarily the county, but if it was some kind of FOIP thing, that they could actually, whoever this other body is, could actually take your phone.
So I have also heard of that too. I have never known it to happen. I think that would be an extreme case and possibly something to do with the RCMP, more criminal possibly, but I have never heard of that happening.
And then
Yeah,
to,
and
like
through the
our
read, just
emails
to
and stuff are
clarify,
all
if
stored
there
on the
was-
server, right? So like any emails that we do, because we have 2 accounts on this thing, right? My own and the county one, but the county one will be stored on a server, so any emails you can access anyway, correct?
We could do that,
Yeah,
but
Matt's saying
generally,
yes.
yeah.
I knew that's how it worked, but
Yeah, we can do that, but generally we would just ask you also
Yeah.
to send
Yeah.
those. You would do a search and send everything you have to us.
so this would mostly, what Corey's talking about mostly refers to messaging then. Text messaging or SMS or,
Yeah, so that would be
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
we would just need like unaltered if there was a FOIP request to come in. And then ultimately the best part that you could do is have 2 separate phones.
Yeah.
And that is available for any counselor that wants one. We just need some notice to get the phone and then get you a new number, and yeah, that's it.
Corey, do you
And
have
if I
anything
could
to
just
add?
clarify, through the reef, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So, just according to the FOIP Act and Section 92, it's more likely that if there is a FOIP request and the person refuses to, give over that information voluntarily, there could be a fine. So it's up to $10,000. So I think that would be an alternative to having to say relinquish one's phone to us. So we would never ask for that, and definitely not in our policies to do that anyways. Hopefully that answers that one. Hopefully.
Deputy Reeve Clausen?
For a person that's had 2 phones since the beginning, it's interesting when you go through a re-election because you put your personal information out there and then people start calling you on your personal, and you got to kind of try to say, I'd prefer that you phone me on this line, to try to keep that continuity. I think it's good too that, I think I've seen in other municipalities, that number, I think Rocky View said this, actually stays with the division, like the county assigned number. So that would be good for continuity if, one day I'm gone and a new counselor comes along, at least that number is
Yeah.
in the public's mind. That's
Which
what I
makes
like.
good sense,
Yeah.
really.
So-
Yeah.
I did just send some documents. There's a FOIP guide for municipal councillors and an infographic about emails and just some more FOIP specific. It's not the FOIP Act, but these are just more resources specific to our role. So there is good information in there, and it does clarify just some areas of FOIP for us. So definitely a good thing to contemplate and take into consideration.
But just out of curiosity, how many people have a county phone in their own phone? Besides, obviously Scott does, right? You do? Mm-hmm. But you use your iPad.
No, yeah, but I've got 2. Yeah, but I got 2 numbers on my phone. So, right, I've got a phone that has the capabilities of having 2 numbers on it. So,
I don't know if that would cover this or not. But anyway.
Ultimately, regardless of what device you're using, any sort of correspondence regarding county business would be FOIPable, whether it's on your personal phone or on like a designated county phone. In that documentation, you will see some delineation between constituency records or that type of thing, correspondence with individual ratepayers, that type of thing, and then council business. So, but it's all there. Have a read. What we can do too is we could do further training if we feel we require it, but it might be good just to review the documentation that's available from Service Alberta and from Municipal Affairs first. And then if there's more questions, we could bring it back for further training for us. And I know I did a different Muni 101 because I wasn't available when you guys did it in person, but it was covered on the virtual Muni 101, but I don't know how far they went into it. And I actually meant to check the manual and I didn't get to it, so.
I just thought it was worth bringing to everybody's attention.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I did check the manual and it's not fleshed out well in the Muni 101 manual. There's a reference to FOIP, but it's unrelated to this matter, so. Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? Perhaps a motion to accept for information?
So moved.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.1, CAO report.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 177 of your agenda package is my monthly report. Any actions or kind of activities should be highlighted in there. The Council Resolution Tracker starts on page 179 of your agenda package. Again, anything in yellow is still ongoing. Anything in green is deemed complete. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? If no questions, a motion to accept the report for information.
So moved.
Councillor Laprise has moved. All in favor? Motion is carried. A second motion to accept the Council Resolution Tracker.
So moved.
Councillor Kester has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.21, Corporate and Financial Services Report.
Good afternoon, Reeve Lincoln Council. Tracy from Administration. Corporate and Financial Services has been very busy this past month with audit and final budget and tax rate bylaw, inserts and all that kind of fun stuff this time of year. I'm pleased to see that staff efforts have come through and shown today. So hopefully, with any luck, we'll have our bylaw passed today. Under assessment, we have mailed out the RRFI forms to Speargrass, Gleason, and Range 25, and that is just requesting any information about residents and outbuildings. We're also doing a general assessment reinspection of those areas. We'll be sending out notices, tax notices, and assessment. April 21st is our tentative mailing date at this time. In financial services, a highlight under accounts receivable is that residents now can pay their invoices via online banking. This wasn't offered before, so we hope that this initiative will reduce credit card fees, create efficiencies, and of course provide an additional payment option. So we're very pleased with that. We also had a digital transformation project kickoff meeting, and that's to understand our current processes and look to migrate our physical and digital files into a centralized and searchable digital program. We're also looking at external services to look at workflow processes to store documents automatically from printers and scanners. So this will help with searchability. And that has been a bit of a challenge in the past, so we're hoping to improve on that. We're also scheduled to review submissions from the joint orthophoto RFP with Rocky View, and we should have a vendor chosen for that very soon. And we're continuing to create the base of our asset management program using Bridges. And that will be our starting point. And also conducted some preliminary research to determine the best data attributes to capture for water and sanitary assets. And that concludes my report. Any questions? Yes.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
You may notice that mailing out the tax notices April 25th.
21st we're looking at. April 21st as a tentative date at this point.
So on April 14th, that's when Wheatland Housing will be setting the requisition. Is that going to give you enough time to change all the notices?
Yeah, so technically right now, what we're going to do is we're going to treat that similarly to an education where there may be a minor over-under calculation on that one. So our education requisition is a great example where we set the rate in our bylaw and it may change. It may be higher, it may be lower, and that's A-okay with us just because legislatively all we're doing is collecting money on behalf of a board that has, or a body that has requisition power over the county. So ultimately we'll just do an over-under calculation, just collect the difference in the next year.
So if it's over, you would collect less next year?
Yes. So if we over collected this year, we'd under collect next year.
Any other questions for corporate and financial services?
Quick question, I guess, about the mail out or address changes. How is that going? Are you getting lots of feedback or?
We are getting a lot of return mail. So we're dealing with that, a substantial amount. And we're just trying to be as proactive as we can. So anything we can think of. The last change we made is sending a letter to all the legal firms. So notifying them and saying, look, send directly to us when you send it to land titles. So we can't think of another way we could get this out to the public. It's going in the connector, social media, Instagram once a week, or Facebook once a week, Instagram every 2 weeks, the connector. Yeah, it's going as many places as we can think of.
Any other questions? Motion to accept the report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We did 4.22 already, so we will move to 4.3.
Reeve, there's that 1:30 in cameras.
Oh, right. Yes, my apologies. Thank
yeah.
you. I will move us into closed session. All in favor? Motion is carried.